Hey, it's Sabine Franco, also known as Sabine the Purpose Lawyer, and I help protect businesses, plan legacies, and protect those assets so you could be safe while you pursue your purpose. Today, I'm going to be talking about trust. I get so many questions about trust, and I kind of want to break down for you some reasons why it may be helpful, right? But first, I wanted to remind you that any information on my page is just for information only. It is not legal advice, so make sure you take it just for learning and understanding of these concepts, right? Okay, so fun fact, right? Did you know that if your legacy planning documents do not include specific language, that it's possible that your family members or your loved ones might have to post a bond? So what does that mean? A bond is kind of like insurance, right? So you put up some money, right, that basically secures the fact that you're going to make good with these funds or these assets that you're in charge of. So whoever you put in charge of your estate, that could be your executor. If you have a will, that could be your trustee. If you have a trust, those individuals may have to put up some funds in order to secure or ensure that they're not going to run off with all the money, right? So it's important that your documents have this information in, because if the individuals that you choose are trustworthy, but maybe not have the amount of funds necessary, or maybe not have the credit level that's necessary, they may be barred from actually representing your estate. And that could be costly for your estate, because then the courts would have to put a professional trustee or professional executor in place, and that is going to cost your estate, because they usually bill by the hour, and it's usually going to take a lot of time and effort to settle the estate, right? So keep that in mind. So now we're going to get into trust. So 7 reasons why you may want to get a trust. And I say may because trusts are not for everybody. Not everyone has the right amount of assets necessary to start a trust, or may not really need it, based upon what you need. So that's why estate planning, legacy planning is very personal, and it's very specific to you. And so no one should ever give you something that you don't need, or tell you that you need something that's not really, right for you or good for you. So these are some reasons why you may want to get a trust, right? So number 1 is to avoid probate. What is probate? Probate is basically the process where your family members, your loved ones, have to take the will that you left and go to court and tell the court that my loved one passed away, and now I want to be able to distribute their assets because I was the executor, or I am a family member who wants to become the executor of the estate. Now, this process can take a very long time. So in some states, it could be 6 months to 2 years or more, depending on what the situation is, and depending if anybody has something to say about how the estate was left. So that's called a contest. If someone wants to contest and say, nah, I don't think that this will was drafted properly, or I don't think that this will was executed or signed properly, I think this person was forced into giving these assets this way, all kinds of things. And so if that happens, it could make it take a really, really, really long time. And then if you died without a will, then the process is very similar, but it's called an administration. In most states, that's what it's called. And so that is what probate is. It is costly. In some states, it's extremely expensive. If the court has to appoint a private executor or a private trustee, if for any reason your family member is not able to act, then they can charge a percentage of what the estate is worth. And depending on what your estate is, that could be very valuable to your family even if it's a small estate, because every single dollar counts, and you want to try to avoid your money going to places that you do not want or you did not intend, right? So that's number 1. The number 1 reason why you may want to have a trust is to avoid probate. Another thing about probate is that your assets become public, because once a will goes into the court system, that is recorded and that becomes public information. Now, you can't just Google it, but you can go down to the court and usually find out what exactly was involved or included in that particular estate. So many people, especially people who are well known want to make sure that their estate and their affairs stay private. So therefore, they like to avoid having just a will as their planning documents. The number 2 reason why you may want to have a trust is to protect a spouse that may not be the best at taking care of their finances or making decisions, right? So we all have our different strengths and weaknesses. You know, that's why when you get married, you usually complement each other, right, in some way or fashion. And sometimes the spouse or the person who you're leaving behind, right, once you pass, may not be the best at managing those finances. And so a trust would allow you to put in certain directions, certain orders, certain requirements for the use and spending of the estate funds. So whatever you leave behind, you can really manage it while you're gone, right? If you put a different trustee in place who may be, you know, more financially savvy and can do what's in the best interest of that spouse or that family member that you're leaving behind when you're gone. That's a very popular reason why people do trust, is to protect the family member that they left behind. Now, another good reason is because if that family member is older and, you know, may need care and things like that in the future, protecting those assets in a trust will give them some protection that they cannot get on their own, or may be extremely costly for them to get on their own. So for that reason, you can give them a type of planning or type of protection that they couldn't obtain without you. And so that's another reason why people get a trust. The third reason why you may want to consider a trust is because you can plan for incapacity. So God forbid something happens to you. If you have businesses, if you have properties, if you need to actually be involved in your day-to-day, which most people are, and suddenly you're not able to, then your plan and all your assets are already owned by your trust, and therefore your trustee, if it's you, usually you should have a backup, and your backup trustee could automatically be able to help you out, right? They have all the control that's necessary to take care of your businesses, your assets, etc., while you are incapacitated. And just so you know, incapacitated just means that you're not able to make decisions for yourself. So you may be ill in the hospital, God forbid in a coma or something like that, and you can't make decisions for yourself. That family member could help you, especially you could bring to light this past year, you know, with COVID, many people experienced that, where they were alive and, you know, thankfully survived, but was not able to sort of function at the level they needed to function. And if someone else was able to have control over their assets, a trusted, qualified person, then everything could sort of maintain the same. A lot of businesses fail because there was no one in place to sort of pick up the pieces when somebody got ill, right? So imagine building something over time, all the sweat, you know, that you put into it, and then something happens to you, unfortunately, and then it all starts to dwindle away. So that's one of the things that people often want to avoid and should avoid. And so those are one of the reasons why you should get a trust, or may want to get a trust. All right, the number four reason why you may want to consider getting a trust is to protect children from spending. The number one reason why estates end up not making it to the next generation is because of an heir or a child who could not manage money, right? And so 2 statistics that I wanted to share with you: those who inherit less than $100,000, 40% of them end up spending it within a short period of time. And those who inherit more than $100,000, 18% of them tend to spend it all within a short period of time. So in order to achieve that generational wealth that we're always talking about, a lot of times for certain children, you may need to put in some provisions, some restrictions in place so that they cannot spend it all. And so a good feature of a trust is that you can sort of say the trust will own the assets for either a lifetime or for certain periods of time, and the children will have access to it for their health, for their education, for their maintenance, even, you know, starting a business or things like that. But they won't be able to diminish all of the assets within the trust, and that way that could stay and live on forever and be a benefit to your children or those who you're looking to take care of. So that's a really big reason why trusts are used, is to protect that next generation. We've heard of, that stigma of trust fund kids who, because they don't earn the money, they tend to sort of just use it freely and not really understand the value of it. So in order to avoid that, I do always recommend that you educate your children, that you educate those who are going to be your heirs and who's going to benefit from your estate. But to the extent that that's not possible or that doesn't happen, you can certainly still put protections in place for them. Number 5 reason why you should or you may want to consider a trust is for tax planning strategies. It is very important that you consider what the estate tax is at the time that you may experience the end of your life, right? We don't know what the future is going to bring, but if you're planning and you're updating your estate documents, every couple of years to account for changes in the law or changes in your assets, we can plan properly to avoid taxes, right? So tax avoidance is legal. You cannot not pay your taxes, but you can avoid taxes with, creative planning. And so if you do that, you'll be able to avoid some taxes with estate planning or with a trust, right? So there's a lot of different strategies that have to be put in place depending on your situation that can allow you to save on taxes and that could allow your spouse to save on taxes if you're married. Number 6 reason why you may want to consider a trust is that you can protect your children or your spouse from divorce. So divorce is one of the major reasons how inheritances get sort of divided or diminished. And typically if you get an inheritance, it's not part of your marital estate. Now, states vary on this, so it may be different where you are, but typically when you get a divorce, your inheritance is not part of your marital estate. But you can do certain things with those funds or those assets that can cause them to become part of your marriage, and therefore it can be split if and when there was a divorce took place. And so when you're creating a trust, right, or your parents are creating a trust for you, there are ways to avoid having those assets be part of an estate. One way is to make sure that they're always living within the trust and do not ever become intertwined with your marital assets. So that's a very big reason why some people would want to get a trust. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why legacy families tend to do those things, so that they can make sure that the funds are there for the natural heirs of that person, or natural born, grandchildren, great grandchildren, things like that, rather than being, split and leaving the family. So the 7th reason why you may want to consider a trust is for creditor protection. What is creditor protection anyway? So that's just basically making sure that the assets that live within the trust cannot be penetrated, attached, taken by creditors, those who you owe money to, right? And so that is good for your heirs, because once you pass and those assets live in the trust, their creditors, their debtors would not be able to gain access to those assets that they're benefiting from, because it's not in their name. So that's a feature of having a trust. Not all trusts function that way, but that's something that you can actually have, that is a benefit or a feature of having a trust. And so there are some ways to have creditor protection with trust within your lifetime, but there may be some reasons why you may not want to do that, right? Again, like I said, legacy planning, these trust documents, all these things are specific to you and your family's needs. So you definitely want to consider speaking to a local attorney in your area to discuss if this will actually, if these things are actually beneficial to you or available to you. So if you're unsure, like I said, make sure you reach out to an attorney in your area. I'm located in New York and New Jersey. If you are interested in connecting with us, please do. We'll set up a consult. And again, I'm Sabine Franco, also known as Sabine the Purpose Lawyer. I help protect properties, plan legacies, and protect businesses so you can be safe while you pursue your purpose. See you next time.